It's not my normal gig. Morning, everybody. I'm John Linc Stine. I'm the Commissioner of the Pollution Control Agency. Today, I am announcing that I've issued the permits and our wetlands approval for the PolyMet mining facility in northeastern Minnesota. Those permits are air and water permits, and as I mentioned, we also issued our letter to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers regarding wetlands certification that the project will meet water quality standards of the state of Minnesota. I am confident that these permits will protect human health and the environment. And I want to just acknowledge that the project has received an unprecedented amount of public input, and I want to thank everyone who provided that input, especially the Minnesota tribal nations and their staff. I want to thank citizens of the state of Minnesota, many of whom, tens of thousands of whom, have spoken up to voice their concerns, their comments, and their support. I also want to thank local units of government in the area that have been forthcoming with information very useful in making these decisions about the project. After more than a decade of review, I'm proud of the staff and our work today. Standing with me is Shannon Lothammer, our Assistant Commissioner for Water, and Jeff Udd, our Manager for the Mining Projects. We have had many committed staff inside this agency over a long period of time, thoroughly and carefully reviewing this project. I'm sure that they are ready and prepared to be protecting the future of Minnesotans in this in northeastern Minnesota, as well as the health of the natural resources in that area. It's a difficult decision, but it's time to make it, and today was the day. With that, I'll answer questions. Maybe we can go to the phones first.
Well, I was going to say, can you just remind us a little bit of what you were looking at and what some of the criteria were that this project met? And,
sure.
To get to this point.
So several things had to be reviewed. There are an air quality permit, which air quality discharges are required to meet certain criteria for pollutants, fine particles, any other discharge of priority pollutants under the Clean Air Act. There's also a national or a regional haze component to our permits to make sure that because the project is in proximity to Lake Superior, the Voyageurs National Park, as well as the Boundary Waters Canoe area, that the air quality of that whole area in the haze of the view sheds would not be damaged. We also looked at water quality standards, the state's water quality standards for anything that would come through the treatment process in this project has been thoroughly reviewed. We have water quality standards on a wide range of criteria that Shannon could more fully articulate. So we had a number of air and water parameters. Then there are also requirements around the movement of anything that could be considered a solid waste. We do that in concert with the DNR's permit to mine, and that was also thoroughly vetted. Our primary work then, beyond our permits, was on the wetland impacts of the project related to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Section 404 permitting. We are required under federal law to issue a statement of certification. It's called water quality certification, assuring that any part of the project that would impact wetlands will meet our state water quality standards, and we have done that as well. Anyone on the phone want to ask a question?
Yeah, this is Jimmy Lovern, the Duluth News Tribune. Can you explain a little bit about the 401 and 404 and kind of what the next step is for the Army Corps of Engineers?
Sure. So those numbers, 401 and 404, pertain to sections of federal law of the Clean Water Act. So our certification is issued under Section 401, which says the state must make a statement or decide not to make a statement, and then you have to notice that to the Army Corps of Engineers, because the Army Corps of Engineers is the one that issues the Section 404 permit. And that Section 404 permit is for waters of the United States, and it includes wetlands. And so that our statement to the Army Corps of Engineers has been issued, and it says that the project will protect receiving waters from impacts resulting from those changes that will be made because of the project. Obviously, when you build a mine, you're going to modify the landscape, and that's our job, is to make sure that the way they do that will be protective of our water quality standards. The next steps then will be for the Army Corps of Engineers in the St. Paul District Office to determine.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dan Crocker with MCR. You said in your opening statement that this is a difficult decision. Could you explain why this decision was difficult for you?
Thanks, Dan. It's difficult because I know many people in Minnesota struggle to think about this project and whether it's a good idea or a bad idea for the future of Minnesota and our natural resources and our water quality, our air quality. I think the difficulty is in knowing that we live with many different points of view. Our job, obviously, at the agency is to follow the laws that are in place, and that's what we based our decision on. Oftentimes, I think decisions are difficult when you know people disagree with the decision you're going to make or that you need to make under the law and the rules. This project is consistent with current law and rules. And so knowing that and having heard so many people when they showed up at the public meetings in Duluth, up in Virginia, and up on the Iron Range, we had a number of very passionate people express their opposition to this. And I've learned a long time ago in my regulatory career that difficult decisions are best made in a timely way when all the information is available, but very transparently. And so I want to thank people for their expressions of concern, because it does help us focus our review. And I'm confident in the work of our staff. So it's difficult because I know many people are not in agreement with this decision.
You mentioned that you think that this decision is consistent with existing law. Do you think that the existing law and those standards are stringent enough for a project like this?
I don't have an opinion on that because my job is to enforce what exists. If there was a need to change the standards, that would be in the hands of the next legislature and the administration that will follow. We have very strict and rigorous standards in the state of Minnesota, much more so than other states. And so I know that as I've traveled around the country and learned from my colleagues, we have very high expectations. We have a very rigorous environmental review program in the state of Minnesota that many states, in fact most states, don't have, that require alternatives to be evaluated and thorough information to be presented to decision makers. We also have the only standard in the nation that's protective of wild rice for sulfate discharges. We're looked upon in the nation as a leading state for environmental protection, and that gives me great confidence that we have good standards that will apply to this project going forward.
Commissioner, this is Renee Gail. Congratulations to your staff on recent last summer. There was a lot of work. The conservation groups have appealed permits issued by the DNR, and I guess most of us are expecting they'll appeal these permits as well. Do you have any comments on that?
Hi, Renee. No, I really don't. I mean, part of every project is going through the process, and people have a right to express their views in litigation, and I would expect there will be people who disagree with these permits. That's their right, but I don't have any comment about those decisions or their decisions. I think that the process that we have in our state to issue these permits is very rigorous, so we are very committed to making sure the science and the engineering review that was conducted on this project can be transparently described no matter what comes next.
Thank you.
This is Ron Brosch with Business North. Providing this project moves forward, how will the charges be monitored? Is it self-reporting, or will folks doing your own tests?
Thanks. Projects this project will be treated like all other projects. There is a rigorous reporting requirement in all of our permits that involve water quality treatment discharges as well as air quality, so that the project owner and responsible party will self-report the data, and our staff will verify by inspection and by truthing the information that comes from the self-reporting of the project sponsor. That's a very well-practiced exercise in our state. We've been doing it for 50 years. We monitor thousands of wastewater treatment facilities across the state. Air quality discharges are monitored and reported, and our staff are expert at looking for inconsistencies and identifying challenges. This project will be thoroughly monitored and closely watched during the construction and operation phases of its life.
Bill, this will be, correct me if I'm wrong, the first mine of its kind in Minnesota. Is there anything different that the MPCA does, given that this is a copper nickel mine versus any other type of project that's happened in the state before?
So the question was about, is it, because it's the first of its kind, is it unique in terms of our work on it? And I would say that no wastewater treatment facility is the same. Many of them look similar, but none of them are exactly the same. Every one is uniquely designed and operated to meet water quality requirements, for example. The same with air quality emissions and discharges. So it is unique in the sense that it's the first of its kind, but the technology is proven, first of all, for the wastewater treatment. It's a reverse osmosis treatment system. There are ethanol facilities all across Minnesota that use reverse osmosis to treat their incoming water. Many community water systems use it for their drinking water treatment. So it's a very proven technology, and our staff have seen it and monitored it in the past at other facilities. There's the approach that we use to monitor and inspect facilities will be the same. It'll be unique in that it's got unique design features like every project does. So I would say this isn't all that unusual for our team to go out and monitor the development and implementation of new or new kinds of facilities. Ethanol facilities were new once upon a time too, as were wastewater treatment facilities of all sorts. So there's certainly a lot that we will be paying close attention to as they develop their treatment systems. One other thing I'll say, because I think it's worth noting that the project and our permits anticipate learning things along the way. And if the science evolves and we learn things through monitoring that aren't working correctly, the company will be required to modify their treatment and address that. That's also sort of standard procedure for us as people implement new projects and new facilities. We monitor and then we learn and adapt if something doesn't go according to plan. They have tested this technology, they have tested their operations, and so we're very confident after 12 plus years of looking at this that we think we know everything we need to know to be prepared. But there's always the possibility that we'll learn something else, and we'll be prepared to respond to that as the staff have done in the past. Any other questions from the phone?
Is there any way for the incoming new state leadership to stop any of this from happening?
The permits being issued would be difficult to change. We don't anticipate that.
Have you talked to the incoming governor-elect about this?
I've not spoken to the incoming governor-elect. I was given instruction by Governor Dayton to finish the work that's on my plate before I leave office. I'm leaving office on January 7th, and this was one of the projects that was on my plate. yesterday, the comment period for EPA's final comments closed at 4:30 p.m. We did not receive any comments from US EPA that would have changed our direction, so today's the day to make our decision.
Can I ask one other question? This is Dan Crocker again with NPR. Are these, how long are these permits good for? And I guess more specifically, how, if it takes PolyMet a few years to start construction, I mean, could these expire at some point if they don't begin construction, say after 5 years or something?
Thanks, Dan. So both the air and water permits have 5-year terms on them. That's the requirement under federal law that they're effective for 5-year periods, and then they get reissued or modified and reissued after that 5-year period. So our permits, these air and water permits, are different than some other kinds of permits that you might think about that are very just sort of construction related. This covers construction and operation of the facility. So both the construction and the operations of the facility are covered in our permits, and that's why they kind of run with the project. The permits will be ongoing until the project is complete.
So I'm sorry, so if, say, after 5 years construction is not started, could they, I mean, would they have to then reapply for new permits, or could,
No, they would actually, continue, they would apply to continue their existing permit. That's the normal process under the federal and state permitting laws for air and water quality.
Do you want to mention that?
Shannon's going to answer that as well.
So Dan, this is Shannon Lotthammer again, Assistant Commissioner for Water Policy. Just one thing that I would add is with any reissuance of a permit, that includes a public notice and comment process. So that process happens again when a permit is reissued, and that's standard practice, and that would happen in this particular case as well.
Thanks, Shannon. All right. Any other questions from folks on the phone? Very good. Thanks, everyone.
People that have joined, I have WDIO, Masabi, Business North. Who else is on the line with us?
No, don't put it in there.
Yeah.
So it's cell phone.
You clip it where you want.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did that go through? She's never did. That's when she